Welcome to Woodworking with Layne and CNC with Wood. We're in my shop today and we're going to talk about how we hold down work. This is something that gets a lot of questions, and I want to go over that and just kind of show you different strategies that I use. This isn't all of them. These are just some things that I do day in, day out to make it a little bit easier on me. I've got some work pieces over here, and we'll hold down some and we'll glue them down, and we'll see what we can do to see how we can get this down. We're going to use x-fasten tape today. We're going to use the blue painter's tape. We're going to use clamps. We're going to use composite nails, and we're going to use sheetrock screws, drywall screws. And so we'll try a lot of different things and see what we can make work. I've already got my board drilled out. You'll see it's got drill outs and inserts for clamps, so I can come in here and use an existing clamp like this and spin this down, spin it till it seats in there fully, spin this down, and I hold the work. And I mean, it holds it down pretty solid. I can dent the wood that way. I can throw several of these on there on either end. The only thing I've got against the incra clamps, you'll see one of these that this works in a T-track. I flip the screw upside down and can use it in these inserts and then spin it loose. The inserts work extremely well. I've never had them come loose. I can drill these at any time from the top with a two-part drill. The center is 23 30 seconds, I believe, and then 0.47 outside. And I'll go a 1/4 inch deep and 3/4 inch deep on the other one. And they seat down in there, and that gives me room to run my spoilboard, but I can back them out whenever I need to also. So this just sits loose that way, and I can screw it down and make that work. So that's part one, is incra clamps. These are good. The downfall on these for me is they stick up a long way in the air, so there's a high likelihood of hitting them with a spindle with a bit. And I've done that. You'll see some of these. I don't know if on any of these, but you'll see scars that my clamps have, and I really can't do much about that. I'm kind of stuck with it just because due to the height of them. These do hold down well, and these are real popular for me when I'm doing slab work because they go a long way up. I can get this a long way down off the board. I can tie it down. It bites real well, and I can move them as I'm flattening a slab or working on a slab. Next clamp for me are the wooden clamps. I think I uploaded files to these onto the Onefinity site on Facebook and their forum. These are really good. These particular ones came with a carbide crate machine, but I make these all the time. You'll see some of them where I've got scars where I've run a bit through them. You're just not really careful, and the bit goes and turns a corner. This does not hurt the bit at all. It doesn't usually knock the wood loose. These are not the most secure way to hold it down, but they're pretty good. And I typically kind of cheat and throw some of these down, and I grab some sheetrock screws, drywall screws, and just pop them down in there till they seat up. Get this square, and since I've got grid lines on here, I know where square's at. And so now that piece is really on there. I can't move it. It's lined up with my grid. It's close enough. I can run a piece off that. I can do a V-carve on it. This one's already finished on the outside. So it's real easy to do, and it holds it down pretty secure. You can see a little bit of wobble. And so if you need to do that, you can always come in and add additional clamps on the either top or bottom. Because if I'm doing a V-carve, I don't want this to move. If I'm cutting all the way through it, it's not that big of an operation. If I'm pocketing, this is what will cause your pocket to have those little trace lines on it that everybody wants to get rid of that are hard to sand out. If I'm doing a thick piece of wood, I've got these pwcnc files that I 3D printed. You can buy these already made, or you can 3D print them. I can grab a clamp that will hold the thicker material, or I can get these thin clamps, and I can either put a screw through here into the Myers insert, or what I like to do is if I'm holding down a piece of work is I will set it on the edge of my grid, line it up, lay it down so I know it's flat, and then I'll stick these little toe clamps on either end. And just like we did with the previous one, I'll see if I can get these to hold down good and get something we can use. So I'm going to start these in, and then I'll suck them down tighter. You can see the workpiece shifted a little bit, so I'll have to back it out, align it back on the grid. The nice thing about the grid is I can see when the piece is lined up. That's secure. You still see it gets a little bit of rock in it, so that's one of the problems that you have on this, is it can move just a slight amount. So you want to make sure that you're going to hold it down properly. If it's on 4 corners, or if you want to do all 4 sides. If I'm going to pull it down like that, I can get that to hold flat. And a lot of this hardwoods will move around. A lot of pine that you buy at Home Depot will move around. This is a real stabilized piece, so it's an old piece, but you can see it's got a little bit of movement in it too. Big wide pieces, that's pretty common. Plywood that you've painted, coated, or done something to a sealer will a lot of times move a little bit, and it makes it really hard to do V-cars accurate. They need to be flat. They need to not move. I've also got pwcnc they give you the free files to 3D print a fence. So if you're going to be doing a lot of work, this is a very easy way to set up a system that you can just drop the work in and know it's going to set accurately every time. And so what I will do is set this workpiece on there, bump it against it, screw this one down, screw this one down. I can move it so I don't have any holes underneath. Get it centered up. I can move it way up on my spoilboard and do the same thing. And now I can set my 0 to something, and it'll always be the same 0. So I can go back and just manually type that in and run right back here and just run job after job after job. Real easy to do. These come in small. They come in a little bit larger. They also have some heavier duty clamps, so if you have to hold down something a little heavier, you can get these and really pull down on them and get a bite. They don't tend to slip. They're a little bit harder to use than the little toe clamps, and they have a piece on either edge. I've broken a bunch of these, and I've run through them with a bit, and it doesn't bother the bit at all. You can see this one where I crashed a bit into it. Still works great for a corner. I drilled some holes in my board, and these inner ones are for bushings. They're a little bit bigger than they're called a 1/2 inch bushing, but they're a little bit over it. I can put those on, use my dead blow hammer, tap that right down in there. I can do the same thing here. I'll go around the corner and do one up here. And now I've got something that'll set there every time. It's real repeatable. And the other thing is this was aligned where the top edge of that is right on my 2-inch grid. So this point here is 2, 2, 2. So the corner of this will be X2, Y2. So that's real easy to get on my machine. I can actually type in MDI and move the bit from home to right there and hit 0. And it's always the same. So I know that this is always going to be the same thing. If I get a different piece of wood and drop it in here, I've got the same thing. It lines up. I can get it right on there. I've got another hole for a bushing down on the table. And I can add these anytime I want. I can add them vertically. So if I'm going to leave one in there, I'll use these 1/2 inch dowels, and I've actually got the slightly undersized holes on this outside part. And I do the same thing. I can push these in, lightly tap them, and now I've got a fence that is a 1/2 inch in from, it's a 1/2 inch in from 0. So 0, 0, so it'll be X.5, Y.5. Easy to do. Real simple. Uses the most of my board, gives me the most room, and it's very simple to switch work pieces and get it to fit right in there and know that's an accurate fence. I can do the same thing vertical. It sits in there. It doesn't matter which way I turn it. It holds in place, and I know I've got a good location. It's called x-fasten tape. It is a woodworking tape. It's pretty thin. It has a lot of stick. If you've used carpet tape before, this is not carpet tape. So I'm going to roll this on back, and I'm going to stick a few strips the height of this, probably 3 inches or so on either side. If I was going to make a cutout in the middle, I'd probably stick a little piece in the middle. But the more you add on this, this gets extremely sticky in a hurry, and it gets extremely hard to pull loose. We'll go ahead and I'll try one more piece. I may go back to regret this. And you can start rolling it on there and get it sized. So if I'm going to do a cutout in the middle that's critical and I don't want any marks on it, this is a piece of maple. So I pull the backing off. Pull the backing strip. It comes off pretty easy. This tape is pretty thin. It's not as thick as carpet tape. It does come off pretty well. It's very likely to pull off pieces of your spoilboard with it. So I get this thing centered up, slide it over till I just bump on my fence, push down on it, and now we've got one secure piece. Notice it still moves up and down just a slight amount. We're talking a 1/16 or 32nd of an inch, but with the accuracy of a Onefinity, you do not want to get this part wrong. If you're doing pockets on this and it wiggles around that little, you're going to have a problem. It's going to leave those little surface marks when it changes bits from the inside 1/8 inch to the outside 1/4 inch, or you start every time you make a pass and it leaves witness lines. So if you like sanding, this is what causes that right here. This is one of those things, is your piece just moving the tiniest amount. The bit pulls that way, the bit pulls back, and you can see that little bit of movement in it. That's what you don't want. You want no movement if you can get this. So I'm going to try to pull this off now. You can use and it will pop loose. You can see where it's pulled out part of the MDF off this. Every time it comes up, it'll get anything that was possibly loose. You can see how thin that is, just super thin. I will give you something else. Do not use too much of this. It is a little expensive, but you don't use very much of it, not like blue tape. The other problem is if you leave this overnight, you may not be getting it off. It does a good job. It's turned into one of my favorites because it's very flexible. If you're trying to do some quality work and you want to do cutouts, this is probably one of the better methods. If you cannot use a compression bit, or the compression bit lets the pieces move and you don't want those little nicks on the side, this holds everything pretty steady. So I'm going to take and just run some blue tape, and I'm going to run it across here. I'm going to cover the entire bottom. And the reason for that is I do not want any glue on the bottom of my workpiece. So I've got this stuck down pretty good. I'm going to push down on it. I'm going to grab my X-Acto knife. Got my shop X-Acto here. And I'm going to just outline this and cut this out. I can do it in an exact square. I don't have to go around the corners exactly. But I want to make this where it seats up there pretty good and doesn't have all that excess tape to mess with. So finish cutting that little piece there. So now you're just removing tape. Cut this around the edge. And now I've got something that's pretty close to what I need. It makes it easier to find out where I want to put this down. So if I want to use those little grids on there, I can slide it to one. I usually align it on something, the center grid, the 4-inch grid. And I may even go up here sometimes when I'm using tape and need a better surface. You want to get up here on that smooth stuff. Now I want to tell you before you put this down, if you've done any surfacing on your spoilboard, wipe this down. This stuff gets a coating on it, and you'll see this one's pretty clean. Guess what? I've got another one in here that is not clean. This is what it looks like when you come off your spoilboard and you've got all that dirt on there. Is it will cause that tape to not stick. That is not what we want. So I'm going to come out here and I can kind of get this down to where I want it. I can run my tape out here. I'm going to move up here on the good part of the table so I get a good secure surface. I don't have to use and cover the whole area. On the bottom part I can gap it and it doesn't make a difference, because this is the end I'm going to put the glue on. But I do want to set this over, and then I want to cut it out. And the same thing we did before. I'm going to cut it. So now I'm going to start peeling up the excess tape. You can see it leaves my nice square right there in the middle. And so that's what I want. I want to leave something I can get a good surface on, and I know where I'm going to go down. So I'm going to push this down really good. I'm going to push on it, get all the wrinkles out, get it smooth. And now I'm going to test fit it. It fits right on top of there. So again, I can align this back to anything I want. Now I'm going to apply super glue to the bottom. Get little extra strings of blue painter's tape. I don't want to run it off on my spoilboard. I don't want to have to cut this off later or chip it off with a chisel. So I'll just go and mark this pretty good. And now I'm going to take my accelerator. I buy this on as a kit from Amazon. It works really well. Wipe that off. Spray the back of it. And now I'm going to line it up. Back to my grid. Get this held down. Push on it. And again, now we've got a good way to hold this down, and it's not going anywhere. The nice thing is it's pretty easy to get loose. We're going to pull my blue tape, CA tape, and glue it off. And you can see where it left a little edge I didn't get peeled, and it peeled off both edges together. Those are stuck together. You can see the glue stuck to itself right there. I didn't leave any on the table, and I didn't want to leave any on the workpiece, so let's see how that works. Peel that off, and there we go. Workpiece is right back to clean again. I've got a wad of that. I didn't get any on me. The CA glue, this is a pretty economical. I've been using this one since about probably 1st of December. I've got a spare one over there. I always keep a spare set because I don't want to get stuck in the middle of a job and not be able to deal with that. To break loose. Now the other way to hold stuff down, I'm going to give you another method. I'm going to show you with a scrap piece of board that I just used for another project. I'm going to scoot this in here, and I'm going to let this one just set for a minute. It dries pretty quick. You don't have to take long to use it. But this is probably my new favorite way to hold stuff down. Is a Raptor composite nail gun. It's real easy to load. This is not a standard nail gun. It uses Raptor composite nails only, and it's only made for those. It has a special nose piece in it. So slide the excess nails out. And so here's what those look like. Composite nails, you can hold them up to your workpiece. Those are probably a little long, so I can back off on those. I can put those back up here to use later. I can slide in one that's a little smaller, and there gives me, that's how deep this part that sticks out, how deep they're going to go in. So I can take and pull this back, slide the nails in. You can see the nails go in. It's pretty easy. I got my compressor running already. Get my air hose out of the way. There you go. So now I've got this loaded. It's real easy to come up here and just run a couple of nails in. Push down on this. And now it's held in place. And if I see this top edge move, I can just right here and throw a couple more nails on it. If I run over these with my CNC bit, it will not hurt anything. It will not hurt anything at all. So I've got a secure piece. It's held down well. If I need to add a piece in the middle of a cut, it will still, it's no problem. Just hit it real quick, stop it. I can even hit pause, hit that, and then just hit go, and it'll go right back to cutting again. The other nice to break loose these, tap it lightly with a mallet. It shears off the plastic composite screws, and it may leave a little bit on there, and if it does, it's very easy work with a small chisel to go clean those up. And I can get simple little screws by the bucket full at Home Depot, and I can just drop these in. This one I used and put an 1/8" circle in my file away from my cut piece. And what I did was I put a .125 circle, and I just dropped 6 of those in away from everything. And then I come run a V-carve on that to start the file. And by running that V-carve, it just, with this thing just sitting loose in place, I zeroed it right here, and it'll just bump those. Actually, this one was upside down, the smoother wood. It's zeroed right here, so it goes and bumps those little pieces in, and I just follow it when it's done with a screw. And this is my other favorite method. I've never had this one break loose. Probably 1,000 carves with screws, and every time they hold. I have had pieces that I may not have got square, but I've never had any break loose. So I can pull this down in 6 locations. You saw that pull down. This board has a little bit of warp because it has a coating on it. When I went and stained this, it warped up a little bit. This was a piece of a test board of mine that I used to show what I do when I put one kind of stain and a different amber shellac over the top of it. I want to use that for a test piece, so I still keep that. It's got it marked on back what that is. But you see there's no movement. If I zero, it's going to be a good zero all the way around. And the workpiece ain't going anywhere. It's not going to break loose. This is probably the sturdiest method. The composite nailer is probably the second, just because you can push down on it and nails real good. If I'm doing a lot of big jobs, the composite nailer is my go-to. If I'm doing smaller jobs, probably the drywall screws is my go-to. Blue tape is what I do when I'm doing cutouts similar to this, and I don't want the cutout to get loose. In fact, you can still see the leftover blue tape where it came loose in here when it cut through it. And I think that ends it for today. I hope y'all learned something about spoilboards. If y'all have any questions, make sure and ask, and we'll see if we can get them answered.